Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel for another video. Today I have a quick but fun video regarding the 5 types of tippers that I see as a live performer. Now, as somebody that performs live regularly, over time I've been able to really see how people like to tip and show appreciation. And there's 5 different types of tippers out there in my opinion. And we're gonna go ahead and do a quick rundown of all of those, but I also wanted to include a little bit later in today's video my most awkward live gigging tipping experience that has ever happened to me live, and you definitely don't want to miss that. All right, the very first type of tipper that I want to talk about today is actually not really a tipper at all, and we're going to get to that. I'm going to call these types of people, it's a small pool of people, but I'm going to call them the stingy requesters. Here's what I mean. It's a very rare occurrence, but it does happen on occasion where somebody will come up and they'll request a song, or even request multiple songs, and they'll be getting into the music, they'll be singing along, they'll be clapping along, but then at the end of the night, they don't tip, they just leave. And again, it's a really rare occurrence. It's happened a couple times that I've noticed. And as a musician, a performing musician, you really don't want to take those things to heart. And the more that these things happen, you can kind of just sit back and laugh at it. But it is something kind of in the music world that it's like if you are watching a live performer and you request a song, it's kind of set in stone that you kind of should tip. It's just kind of the right thing to do. And again, you don't have to do it. That's why I kind of sit back and laugh these days. But I'm going to call these types of people the stingy requesters because typically they're the ones that request songs, but then just like hike out and leave basically after their meal. So again, very small group of people, very small population of people like that, but it does happen. It's a very rare occurrence, but I'm going to start off with those types of people and I'm going to call them the stingy tippers. All right, the second type of tipper that I want to talk about today, I'm going to call these folks the handouts. And what I mean by that is they're the type of tippers that even though I have a tip jar out there as well as a QR code sign where people can tip me virtually, they want to come up and they want to physically give me the tip. They want to physically give me, show their appreciation that way. And I think it's really cool. I think it's personable. And usually this happens obviously whenever I'm not in the middle of a song. So this can be at the end of the night when I just finished up. This could be between sets or between songs. And I only have one problem with it. And I think it's just a personal problem with it. It's really when it happens between songs, and it's awesome. Again, I love it when people show appreciation that way because, you know, they don't have to give tips or anything like that. But when I'm between songs and people do that, I do feel like people that are sitting around are just watching that exchange of them just handing me cash. And I just find that that's a little bit awkward for me. I know that's probably just an issue that I have myself, and not everybody has that as a performing musician, but that's my only stipulation about it. Again, I love when people show appreciation and want to talk between songs, but I do feel like all eyes are on me or on that exchange when that time does happen. All right, now really quick before we do get into the next 3 types of tippers, what I do want to ask is if you would like to support the channel directly today, and if you would like to show your appreciation that way to the channel, to Growth in Music, just make sure to subscribe. I come out with content every single week, and you definitely don't want to miss it, so make sure to subscribe. All right, up next at spot number 3, I'm going to call this group of people the encore tippers. And this is one of my favorites because it does happen on occurrence. It's pretty rare, but it does happen. Where basically, let's say you play a little bit of an earlier show. Maybe you play like 5 to 7, and people are still kind of coming in for dinner around 7 o'clock, but you're just finishing up. And for example, this has happened about 2 weeks ago, actually, where somebody will come up to you and basically say, oh, we came for the live music and for dinner, but we were a bit late. Would you be able to play about 3 more songs or a couple more songs for us? And they tip you really well. And this happened to me again 2 weeks ago, and it's no problem at all, especially if I'm playing only 2 sets. I mean, I do 2 sets all the time. It's pretty comfortable. Usually the restaurant and the staff and the managers, they don't care. You're playing above and beyond what they required you to play, so they'd have no problem with it. And again, you usually get tipped really well, and people are really appreciative of that. So if that time ever does happen, take advantage of it, but I'm going to call these type of tippers the encore tippers. All right, up next we have the surprise tippers. And sometimes those that you least expect to tip you well will surprise you sometimes. Here's what I mean. As a live performer, you know, once you're warmed up, it's awesome to just have fun, jam out, look into the crowd. And sometimes you see people that just seem to like not really care about what you're doing. They have their backs turned, their heads turned, they're not worried about what you're doing. And then you do have some instances where people are just loving it, they're watching you, all that is great. But sometimes it's those people that seem to not care at all about what you're doing come up and tip you the best. And those are really encouraging, especially with what I do as a solo acoustic performer. I'm hired a lot of the time to be more of a background music. So it is really cool when people do get into the music and you can visually see it. But like I said, it's also really encouraging when people who you might not expect to tip you or tip you well even come up or before they leave to tip you well, because the whole time their back was turned to you, they never made eye contact, nothing, but it is really encouraging. And I'm going to call these types of tippers the surprise tippers. All right, before we get into the last example, I do want to share a quick story like I'd mentioned earlier in the intro, my most awkward occurrence when it comes to getting tipped as a live performer. Now, I've been performing live for about 4 years very seriously and pretty regularly, and I would say this one definitely takes the cake here. What had happened was I was in the middle of playing a set. So this wasn't like between sets when I was taking a break or at the end of the night. So I was kind of just trying to keep the songs coming and keeping people, in their seats. And I had a gentleman come up basically between songs. So I was on a mini break. I was just getting things prepared for the next song. And he basically came up and he wanted to tip me. I think it was like a $5 bill. So he basically tipped $5 and really quickly had said like, oh, I thought he was joking too. He was like, oh, do you have change for a 5? And before I even answered anything, he basically put his hand into the tip jar and took out like 3 $1 bills. So he basically tipped me $2, but he just took 3, put in his pocket and left. And I will never forget that, because I was like, 1, that was really awkward. 2 is like, it happened so fast that I was almost like surprised. I thought he was joking and I was kind of stunned. I was like, did that really happen? But weird things are going to happen. And again, that was more under the umbrella of, getting tips and stuff, because that's what today's video is all about. But that was my most awkward occurrence to date. And if anything ever beats that, I will make sure to put that in a YouTube video for you guys. All right, for the final spot number 5, we have the confused tipper. And this happens a lot more than you may think. And this is when somebody comes up to tip you, and even though, like I had said earlier, I always, in my opinion, I have a very visible tip jar on a stand next to my QR code sign, all that stuff, they still are confused looking around to see where they should tip. And it's pretty amusing. And again, it happens a little more often than you may think. The most awkward part, I will say for sure, is when they're up there right next to you, pretty much. You're in the middle of a song typically. And after a couple seconds of them not finding the tip jar for whatever reason, they look up and you guys just lock eyes. And there's nothing you can really do about it as a performer, especially if you're in the middle of a song. Again, I'm always constantly singing and playing. I can't really stop the song to help them navigate. So typically they'll end up finding it, but it is an awkward 10 seconds, definitely. And there was one time where this happened where somebody came up and you could tell they were genuinely confused. They just couldn't find the tip jar. Maybe it was because I was under some dim lights, or it was evening time and they had been drinking, who knows. But they had come up and they ended up, it was like 15 seconds later, they ended up taking their 5 and they just put it on top of my amp and left. And again, kind of an awkward situation, but it does happen. And I always find that to be the most amusing. And like I said, it does happen a little bit more often than you may think. All right, I know today's video is a bit of a brief video, but I had fun with this one because I got to share a couple of stories with you guys and talk about things that I really like to shed light on, which is live performing and gigging things and gigging related ideas and topics. So I hope you liked today's video. And if you would like to see more videos from the channel just like this every single week, make sure to subscribe to the channel here at Growth in Music, and I will see you guys next time.